And you can go ahead and start letting people in.
I'm going to pull up the shared doc really quick and I'll start doing that.
Do you want me to let people in,
Yeah.
Melanie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to admit them all.
I'm going to go ahead and mute. And then are we muting people as they come in?
Yeah, thanks. Everybody who's coming in. All right, here we go. I'm going to hold on my welcomes, otherwise I'm going to repeat it every time I hear a doorbell go here. So welcome though. And Dennis or Melanie, have you checked? Are we live on YouTube? Okay.
Checking now. YouTube's okay.
It is on YouTube.
Oh, thank you. All right, it's 7 o'clock. We'll give everybody one more minute to pop in and then we'll get started. For those of you who are already here, welcome. I can hear that ding dong of the doorbell.
Hi.
Hello, welcome.
We'll work together. Thank you for hosting the meeting.
Oh, you're welcome.
Oh my gosh, am I first?
Were you the very first?
Hi, guys.
I must say, Zoom has got positives and negatives, but one of the great things about it is it's super easy to get to a meeting from home, right? Especially the evening ones after you get home and you got to come back. So it looks like people are still flooding in. I want to give them a minute. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to
Of
repeat
course.
myself. So if everybody's got an email or two to catch up on, I'm going to give them about 2 more minutes because I can see that waiting room exploding right now. Okay, it looks like the doorbell has slowed down. It's that lull at 8 o'clock at the end of Halloween, you know, when the doorbell stops. So why don't we go ahead and get started? My name is Principal Donnelly. I'm the principal here at Mesa Verde Middle School. And this forum tonight is really to kind of fill in our parents and our community on where we're at as far as reopening our campus for on-campus instruction and kind of to tell you where we're going next. So again, welcome. I have a couple people here to introduce. Let me get my clicker going. So for tonight, the big questions, of course, are going to be, will Mesa Verde open for the 61% of our families who chose in-person instruction? Will a virtual option continue? The question, why hasn't the school opened already? Like the PUSD elementary schools and others around the county. Will we resurvey parents to give a chance to change their July commitment? Will students get new teachers when we reopen? And what will that schedule look like? So I can give you some quick answers here so you don't have to wait for the ending is, will we reopen? Absolutely. Will a virtual option continue? Absolutely. Why hasn't our school opened already? It's complicated. I'm going to explain a little bit about that, why middle and high schools are different than elementary. Will we resurvey you at some point to give you a chance to change that July commitment? Yes. Will students get new teachers when we reopen? Perhaps, and I'll explain some of the factors that are involved in that. And what will that schedule look like? Again, I'll kind of go over some details and answer some of those questions as we go along. So a couple people in the room with us. We have our superstar assistant principals. We have Melanie Brown. Melanie can say hi so you can see her face.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. And of course, Dennis Panganiban.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. And we also have a teacher here, Jennifer Hansen. She's an 8th grade teacher at Mesa Verde, and she's part of our reopening team that's doing this really difficult work, to be honest. So Jennifer, if you want to say hi.
Hello, hi everybody.
Hey. So for tonight, we'd prefer the questions in chat to start with, but if you could kind of wait as we go through things, Dennis and Melanie will be monitoring the chat. I know chat, we try to disable it on YouTube. It is open, but I'd say use it sparingly, please. And if I could get everybody to let Dennis and Melanie kind of monitor the chat and answer the questions they can, and then get me the other questions. Because I worry a little bit if somebody else is answering the questions, it might be the wrong answer, and then there could be some misinformation out there, okay? So if you do put something in chat, just give us kind of a heading like concurrent model and then your question. And after most slides, I'm going to go ahead and try to pause and see if there's any questions that came in that are applicable at that time. But just know Mr. Panganiban and Mrs. Brown, they know the presentation. So if they know an answer is coming later, they're not ignoring your question. They just know it's going to get answered. Okay. All right, so what is our goal here at Mesa Verde? Well, here's the moon and there's Earth. So right now we're trying to. So what are we doing? We've got small groups returning. We're trying to adopt a model for families who want to return. And of course, our goal is students who want to be at Mesa Verde are at Mesa Verde. So what's going on? Just a minute, I'm trying to see my screen here. So what's going on at Mesa Verde currently? Those of you that live in the neighborhood, you've probably seen school buses coming. You've probably seen a lot of cars in the parking lot. You've probably even seen some students being dropped off and picked up. So we opened 2 special education classes back on September 24th. We added another one and we're planning for a 4th. We actually have 4 classrooms totaling about 50 students who are here. They come to campus, most of them every day, but some of them a couple days a week. They do their virtual learning while they're here on campus, supervised by staff and substitutes. That started about late September with 1 room, and we've increased. We increased pretty quickly, so we've had those 4 rooms going for a few weeks now. We do have plans to add another room. We have some pretty specific criteria for having that, because we could probably name hundreds of students to bring back right away, everybody who wants to come back. But right now we're limited in how many we can service in that project. Our counselors have been on campus since we, started back in actually probably in July. They're working very closely with our students who need more academic and social emotional help. They're sometimes they'll have students come in and work with them. They're certainly monitoring those rooms, and they're taking a lot of phone calls and emails. Our English language learners, we have an elective here for our students who are learning English as a second language, and they come twice a week, and that's been going on since September 30th. And right now, like I said, our parking lot's pretty busy. The refrigerator is pretty full too, so I know they're here. We've got about 40% of our teachers who are here daily, teaching virtually from their classroom, and another 20% who kind of toggle back and forth between home and school. And it's kind of cute because these groups that we have going, these classrooms, teachers who happen to be on campus teaching virtually will often go borrow a student or 2 and bring them back to their classroom and do some work with them. So there's a lot of fluidity going on campus with kids, that they're in a cohort group, but their teachers, their regular teachers can come and get them if they need to maybe work with them on something specific. So we've got lots going on campus. So any questions about that? I'm gonna pause real quick. Is there anything in the chat, Melanie or Dennis? If you do have a question, it's better to put, hey, I have a question in the chat, and then we can call on you if we need to.
There are no questions at this time.
All right, we'll keep moving along. So I want to let you know, like, we all went to school open. Like, that was the moment we came back in August. How do we get the kids back? How do we do this safely? That is our goal, is for students to be on campus. I have a junior over at Westview. He wants to be back on campus. So I feel for those of you who want your children to come back to campus as soon as possible. We're working on that, but I also realize we have a lot of families who want to stay virtual, and we want to support that as well. None of these models that we're going to talk about tonight, and nothing can match the power of what Mesa Verde's been doing since 1994. But we're really trying to do best by the students in less than ideal circumstances. We all have to be flexible, give a little. Life's going to go back to normal. We thought it was going to be sooner rather than later. It's taken a little longer than we thought, but we got to get through this. And I can say, through all this, there's a saying that a sailor who only sails in calm water never gets better. So sailing through a storm, we do get better. Our skills improve, and we will come out of this better all together. That's what I believe, and I know it's going to happen. So tonight, as we talk about some different things, I just want to make sure everybody understands when we kind of talk our shorthand that we do sometimes at schools. When we're talking about a master schedule, that's that big plan, and that means which classes are offered, which periods. We build those classes by period based on what electives students choose, what their math level is, if they're in a different language arts program, again, if they're in AVED, band, things like that. So we build based on the students' wishes, and we take those requests way back in March. And so we're doing a lot of building all through, probably we start early March and we build all the way to the first day of school. And then of course it's dependent upon teacher credentials too. I don't have a French credential, therefore I could not teach a French class, right? And let's say I was a French teacher and they said, well, we don't need French this year. Why don't you teach Spanish? If I don't have a Spanish credential, then I can't teach Spanish. So we're limited in a lot of ways in how we build based on what the credentials are. What does AB schedule mean? You're seeing that all over the place when we're talking about secondary. That's really when in school, kids who are coming to campus would either come 2 days a row on campus, 2 off, or 1 day on, 1 day off, AB, AB. So that's what we're talking about with AB. AM, PM is what's going on at the elementaries right now, where you split and you would come half the day, either in the morning or the afternoon. And then concurrent simultaneous, you're hearing that throughout the district. That's essentially the model where the teacher would be in the classroom with some of their live students there in front of them and be teaching both to the students in the classroom and the students who are zooming in virtually from home at the same time. So that's that concurrent simultaneous model that you've heard about. And again, the students who are virtual would be coming into the classroom via Zoom or sharing a screen and Canvas and things like that. So any questions about these terms or phrases? I'll take a drink of water with the cap off. Any questions, Melanie? Oh, all right.
There is a question, but I think you're going to be getting to it soon.
Okay, all right. So will we open for in-person? And the short answer is yes. Like I said, we've actually already been open in that limited way since mid-September. We started bringing kids back in right away. And I have to give a huge shout out for our counselors. Like even in August, before we opened and we knew it was going to be virtual, they went through all their lists of kids from the distance learning experience during the spring. They identified the kids who were not very successful, kids that they were worried about. They made hundreds of phone calls and emails before school even opened to really kind of make sure everybody knew that, what supplies they might need, but also that we're here to help. So we were thinking about the kids who were going to struggle right from the very beginning. And then the other piece of this is, when are we going to reopen? Well, our timeline's dependent on a number of factors, and we're going to discuss those factors tonight. But our target zone is really December 7th through January 25th. And you might be saying that's a really wide range of time. And that really depends on the two different kind of models that we're looking at right now. One takes a lot more time to implement than the other. And that's a piece of the factors, but you kind of putting out there too, the, you know, give the worst case, but hopefully we could even return earlier. And again, why is it taking so long? It's incredibly complicated due to matching student and teacher schedules, trying to keep kids with their courses, things like that. Okay. So the second part of this is why haven't we opened like the elementary schools and other schools that you've heard about in the county? Well, in elementary school, and I just came from Principal Elementary for 7 years, you have one type of credential at elementary school. It's a general education, multi-subject credential, which allows them to teach any of the grades at elementary school. And so because you're matching one student to one teacher and one type of credential, it's a little bit easier. But even with that, I know my friends that were doing the scheduling all during August, it was very complicated. They were working up right before school started to make sure that the parents that wanted virtual got virtual and trying to keep it at their sites. So even with the fact that you're matching one student to one credentialed teacher, it still took a lot of work, and it ran them right up until the school year started. So again, elementary schools, you've got one student, say, who wants in-person learning. You're matching that student to one teacher, and teachers have some flexibility. You probably had it happen. Your child's second grade teacher, and now they're in 5th grade, and now they have that same teacher in 5th grade, because at elementary level, teachers do move grade levels, same as at secondary. Secondary, you have one student, but you're matching to several teachers. And so each teacher's credential is a part of the factor. And what courses the students want to, of course. And here at Mesa Verde, we have over 1,100 students. So again, that part is why haven't we opened? It's the secondary schools. Again, we start back in like February and March, building that master schedule based on students' choices of electives and what their math level is. And then the summer, we fine tune the schedule. So the teacher's credentials limit the flexibility in signing courses. And of course, we want to give kids the courses they want. Why have other public and private schools, secondary outside of Poway, already opened? We've certainly looked at their models. I know that that's all we ever ask. Anytime anybody goes to anything at the county level or something, we're like, what is everybody else doing? What are the ideas? So we're constantly looking for those. But one of the things that you're hearing now is some schools might be opening with a full class load, like say up to 38. Poway is really committed to following the California Department of Public Health Safety Guidelines. And so we are not setting up full classes, which would be, you know, in Poway, some of the math classes are large, some of the electives are large. All the classes could be very large. So that's part of the constraint that we're working under too, that even when we reopen, we can't get all the in-person kids back every day. We have to split. So any questions at this point? I'll take a breath.
Yes, there are a couple of questions. The first one, I believe you covered, it's how students are coming on campus to learn, like how are students being identified?
Right. So with the counseling department, we really did look at, you know, a lot of factors, social emotional, interviewing the students, interviewing their parents. We didn't open it up for everybody to necessarily contact us. Of course, the teachers are, you know, part of that process. They help identify students, but we look at a number of criteria to decide who gets that service right now. We wish we could offer it even bigger, and we're kind of working towards that. But yeah, we've developed that criteria with the counseling department.
Another question is, how will we assist sixth graders in helping them know where to go since they haven't been on campus yet?
You know what, that was one of my favorite questions, I think. So when I developed this PowerPoint tonight, or I guess it's called Google Slides now. So when I developed this presentation, I was using the questions and comments that came in from parents on that Google form that I sent out about a week and a half ago. And that was one of the questions too, is thinking about, you know, what are we going to do for our sixth graders that didn't get the tour of the campus and things like that, for the sixth graders who are coming back? We do have some different videos that we'll send out ahead of time, but I'm assuming that we're going to go ahead and do something where the sixth graders come beforehand and they can get a tour of the campus and stuff. Those are all kind of like the logistical fine-tuned details that come as we get closer and closer to opening. Those are things that we know how to do well, right? Like we know how to welcome students. We were just talking with the counselors the other day about virtual ambassadors for kids who are new to our school. How can we transfer our ambassador program that we've always had here into a virtual ambassador program for students who register at this time of the year? So I think I feel good about those things. That's what school does well, is making sure kids feel welcome. So I'm assuming that we're going to go ahead and do some kind of welcome day for our sixth graders and new seventh and eighth graders too. Okay. Was that it? Okay. So will the virtual option continue? Yes. And I want to reassure our families who have selected virtual in the summer, continue to plan to be virtual students, there will still be a virtual option. Equity between the programs is front and foremost for us. How do we make sure we're ensuring the best experience for both our virtual students and our in-person students? And so we're really aware of that, and we're committed to offering a top-notch virtual program. And as we look at these different models, there could be changes though, I have to tell you. In-person students and virtual students, teachers, or access to some of the electives and specialty courses could change. I can't give you an exact list of what that might be tonight. We've been working on that, and it's very time consuming. That's part of the work that we're doing right now. So I know the first question would always be, does my kid still get pottery if we had pottery, right? Is her teacher going to be virtual? Can I switch to virtual so they can keep pottery? Those are all those questions. I think I want you to remember too, if you're selecting virtual, it's because you really got concerns about your child coming to campus and you want to be virtual. It shouldn't be which course they get necessarily that drives that decision. So we wouldn't give you necessarily a list of which courses are going to be virtual or in person before we allow you to kind of change your summer survey. And I'll talk about that a little bit. Virtual students may have classes that are taught in a concurrent simultaneous model. So that means right now, all the kids are spread across the master schedule, and you might think, well, why didn't you just switch them back in August? Because that amount of time, remember, like that amount of time that goes into that, it couldn't be done in that short period of time between when we got our survey results in very early August, late July, to when we had to reopen in September. We had a master schedule already built. It was built for the kids based on their choices. And so now we have, the classes are all a mix of virtual and in-person students. So when we're looking at coming back, that's one of the factors we're looking at, is how much are we going to have to disrupt schedules? And that's a really big decision for us as a school. I want you to know that. We do need to confirm with parents if they're still going to stay VLA or in person. You'll get that chance to do that in the next week or two. And then because we want you to know too, though, what's the model going to be, right? Is it going to be simultaneous concurrent? Is it going to be rebuilding the master schedule? We're going to talk about those models a little bit, but we know you want to know what the school day is going to look like. We can't tell you which courses necessarily or which teachers, but we will be able to get you that information before you get a chance to ask for a change to your summer selection, okay? The one thing though is when we're on campus, we're following the safety guidelines. Kids are not always going to be 6 feet apart. That's who kids are. We're doing a lot of things to mitigate that with, dividers on the tables, plastic dividers and things. And we're going to enforce masks and things like that. But, kids are kids sometimes, and they'll be near each other in the hallways and stuff. So we've got plans in place, but, we have to allow for the fact that these are teenagers, a lot of them. So our district though we're monitoring very closely, and I know there's the dashboard that says if there's been a case at a school and if a classroom. What I did want to share with you is that we haven't had community spread from these cases. So the cases in these classrooms that have been closed or partially closed are singletons, and it's coming from outside and it's not being spread. So that means that the safety guidelines that we're following are working. Like I shared, we've had students on this campus probably from the first or second week of school, just with a few, and we're up to, like I said, probably almost 100 a day. And that's really given us a good chance to try out our safety protocols, with a smaller group, so that when we do have, say, 300, 350 students coming back, we practice these things. We know how to add extra screening places. This guidebook tonight, I don't want to spend a ton of time going into all the details of what the safety plan would be. The district's done a great job with this reopening guidebook. You can always refer to it. That's what we're going to follow every time. That's what we've been doing since we've had students on campus, and we do get a lot of questions. So I just wanted to let you know that we've got different things in place. We want a safe return, temperature checks, masks, signage, hand sanitizer. We want you to come back and stay back. That's our goal. Once we open, we don't want to have to get closed. So we will enforce the masks. There are all sorts of protocols in there for if a child refuses to wear a mask. Not necessarily a special needs child who it might be a real sensory issue. We've got protocols in place for that too. But let's say it's a child that says, I'm not going to wear it and you can't make me. We'll take care of that. Okay. Questions at this point? Like I said, I don't want to delve real deep into the safety guidelines because I think they're very clear in that guidebook. And as we get ready to reopen, we'll have another parent forum, certainly, especially for the parents who are returning on campus, to go over those safety protocols, to answer those detailed questions, put out some FAQs, things like that. But just any big general questions tonight, if you've got them, I could ask Dennis and I could answer a couple of those right now.
So Ms. Donnelly, we do have quite a few questions on other topics. So if you want only about the
Have I covered the other topics yet, or will I cover them?
Some of them, yes, some of them, no.
Then go ahead. The ones that I won't be covering, go ahead.
Could we talk about providing in-person opportunities for clubs and electives as appropriate sooner than the
So Dennis, Mr. Pangadim and I have already been talking about like the robotics clubs. How do we get them space? Dennis, you want to talk a little bit about some of those bigger groups that we've been discussing?
Yeah, so one of our plans is to try and get some, it's kind of weird when I can't see anybody. Our robotics clubs here on campus. We are looking at some of the, like Science Olympia I just went out to. I think a lot of it is virtual as well. But the biggest thing for us is when we work with the clubs, we have, everything as far as the spacing and the timing. And also if we have any of our members come on, we follow all the screening protocols. So that's kind of where we are right now with it. But again, it's getting, the interest, finding out who's available, and then looking at timing and spacing to provide for those clubs. So we are working with ASBs. There are some clubs that have actually, some kids have wanted to reach out and create clubs. So ASB is helping with that as well, just to coordinate.
So we can, and that was our big question probably about a month ago or so, is can we? And yes, the answer is we can. So there is a form that parents sign that their child will, follow the safety protocols. And so we have that in place. So the clubs that kids are interested in resuming, maybe that it already had kind of a pattern and stuff from previous years, they can reach out to Mr. Panganiban, and then he'll work with the rest of us to get them a space if they need a space. That's where we're at on clubs. So we're totally open to doing those. And like I said, I think Science Olympiad, did you say is all virtual this year or not? Or how are they doing Science Olympiad?
Yeah, most Science Olympiad, I think they are restarting what they didn't finish last year. And I've already been in contact with with one of our leads on that. And Mr. Tran is helping coordinate that. We actually also had something last night with the Cyber Patriot interest list and stuff like that. So we're rolling with the clubs, and as soon as we get things formulated, it's easier for us to, once we find out who's interested, how many, so on and so forth. Then again, it is the making sure we have the protocols in place, the spacing, and the time, and and everything like that. So that's where we are.
Okay. Anything else, Melanie?
The next question would be, I'm going to combine two questions together. Why are we talking about reopening when cases are rising? And would we still reopen if we went into the purple tier?
We're already technically open with our smaller groups. So if we're in the purple tier, we can continue to explore reopening to more students. And then we're following the county guidelines and the district's monitoring those things about saying that, yeah, we can reopen right now. So as a site, we wouldn't make an individual decision whether or not the safety restrictions by the county and the state are applicable to us. We work with the district very carefully on that. And again, we're offering a virtual option for those families who don't feel comfortable coming back. You can switch to virtual once we get closer and we resurvey you, or you can continue virtually. Anything else?
I think one more that fits here would be if we are going to be disrupting student schedules, will a change happen at a grading break?
Yeah, so if we do and I'll talk about these models in a minute, but yeah, we would try to work it with a grading break because there's a lot of pieces that go with changing schedules, and I'll explain that in a little bit. Okay. All right, so what do these models that we talk about look like? So models are that we're exploring. There's no easy answer to how to reopen simply, and one of the pieces of that is under the public health guidelines is we're not going to put 20 plus students in a class unless it happens to be a very large space. We don't have a hard number like, oh, no more than 12 or no more than 15. We have to really look at everything that's going to keep the kids as far apart as possible. And so when we talk about different models, how do we do that? But then knowing that no matter what we do, we can't get all 700 students who originally elected for in-person on campus every day. It's too many kids in the hallways. It's too many kids at lunch. It's too many kids in the classrooms. So that's the most frustrating thing I think about for the kids who want to come back, and the parents, and for us is we'd love to have them back 5 days a week. But where we start right now under the county guidelines and everything is going to be that they'll come part-time. It means that then they're doing different work at home on the days they're not on campus. So we have looked and tried to figure out anything we could to get it so that the kids could come every day and still meet all those guidelines, and we just can't do it. So the models, what do they look like? So 3 basic models that we're talking about here. The one that would impact the kids' schedules would be the rebuild the master schedule. And probably in an A-B day, that's why I'm calling it A-B, like they would come every other day or maybe 2 days in a row and then, another 2 days. Those are some of those specific logistics that we still are working out as a campus that we would then get out to families. But the main goal of rebuilding the master schedule is to match the virtual kids with the virtual teachers and the in-person kids with the in-person teachers. Some electives and unique courses might not be available to all students. It goes both ways. Because if it's a virtual only class, perhaps it's only available to the virtual kids and vice versa. Students in this kind of model would attend, like I said, because we can't have them come every day. The in-person students would come 2 to 3 days a week on that kind of A-B model. And then the students who are in person, IP, would be, let's say if they're in a class that the teacher is virtual, but the student is still in the class because it's maybe a unique class. The students would still be able to be on campus for that class while the teacher teaches remotely and we have supervision in the room by staff or substitutes. So that's kind of a unique thing. And you'll see that across the district. We're talking about that at every site. Most students would end up with, in this rebuild, with at least 1 to 2 new teachers. I can tell you mathematically, right now, we're, like I said, we're about 60% of our families chose for in-person, 40% chose for virtual. When you look at the number of kids who say would change a humanities class, it's the inverse. So of our in-person students, probably about 35 to 45% would get a new humanities teacher, and the opposite for the virtual. Kids are flexible though, you know, like it makes us go like that, but realize this would be done at like in a semester, if we can maybe move the semester up even a little bit. So it's not all the way to February 1st, but it makes us really nervous. But remember, kids are flexible, and we would do this, you know, as painlessly as possible and help coach the kids through it. We'd have lunch on campus. We'd have passing periods. There'd be buses. Our start and end times would be very similar to a normal school year. And with this one, because it takes so much work to rematch everybody and rebuild a new master schedule, this one would be a reopen mid to late January. The next one is concurrent simultaneous. That's the one we talked about briefly before. This one keeps the current teachers. There may be 1 independent workday per week for all students, just kind of match everything up. Students who are in person would be here again 2 to 3 days per week. But then on other days, instead of independent work, they'd actually be zooming into that current concurrent simultaneous classroom. And then again, the students who are in person, but their teacher happens to be remote, would be on campus, learning on their Chromebook in a classroom supervised by staff or a substitute. There might be some additional equipment and certainly training and stuff for the teachers. It's a whole new world on that one, and wrapping our minds around it, there needs to be some training. Lunch, passing periods, buses, all the same things. That one we could reopen sooner because we don't have to remix the master schedule, but we still have to put things in place like the training and make sure everybody's at a good spot for that. So this other one, it's very confusing to think about, and it's not necessarily like one that we're leaning heavily toward, but I wanted to put it up there to show you how many different things we've been trying to figure this out with, right? And sometimes when you kind of explore one model and you don't use it, that's okay, because it's giving you information that'll make it better for the other models that you kind of narrow it down to. So this is the idea that you would split the day in half. And so in the morning, the teachers would teach their kids, like say in-person kids come in the morning, and then in the afternoon they teach virtually, and the kids on the opposite time are doing independent work. And then again, you can see that in-person students, if their teachers Zoom, this blue one I highlighted, they would be in a classroom supervised as they Zoom in. The problem with this one that we've discovered is that because again, we can't have all the in-person kids back at one time, we'd have to split the kids. And so then they're only here for 2 to 3 mornings a week and doing independent work on those mornings plus the afternoons. So there's some issues with that one, but as we've been exploring that one, it's been giving us more information. Passing periods, but it wouldn't be lunch because it's a half day, and busing might be an issue. That one, again, we could reopen a little bit sooner because of the fact that we don't have to rebuild the master schedule. Okay, so all of these together, I'll give you a minute to peek at that. I was an English teacher, so I tend to be more wordy. I don't use as many graphics, I know, but I like the words on there. And you can see the commonality between these is that blue one, right? All of these would have this situation where we have fabulous teachers who happen to be teaching virtually, and we still want to keep the kid in that class. So the kid would take the class on campus, zooming in. Again, it wouldn't be all their class in a day. And we'd be kind of careful about that. If we saw a lot of the classes being that way, we'd probably maneuver some student schedules so they don't have all their teachers that way, of course, right? So I'm going to pause here and give you a second to look and see if Melanie's got questions.
There are, Ms. Donnelly, a lot of questions. I think the first one that you might want to address is, are we voting on these models? Is one of the questions.
No, we wouldn't have parents vote on this. So we are seeking your input though tonight, your questions that kind of come in. Also, we've created, our reopening team has created a parent kind of questionnaire to get an idea about how you feel about different aspects, not necessarily the schedules, but what the schedules would create. So I'm going to be sending that out. My goal is, I'm going to say tomorrow afternoon, and it might be even earlier than that. I'm fine tuning that survey. It'll come in on SurveyMonkey. So it gives parents a chance to give us some input on different aspects that would affect their child's schedule or their child's independent work, things like that. But we wouldn't vote because to vote, you're going to get a split and then, nobody's happy. And we got to take a lot of things into account. So the reopening team is really exploring these. We do have to make a decision pretty soon because we need to get our plan going and let parents know what it's going to be so we can resurvey you to see if that's still your choice for virtual or in person. But there's not going to be a vote. This is the work of the reopening team on campus.
Another question has to do with families with students in elementary, middle, and high school. Is there going to be any aligning of schedules?
Well, yeah, so I know that one came up this summer too, and it comes up a lot. It's very difficult because what if one family has a child at Deer Canyon and one has one at Westview, and Deer Canyon's AM, PM, and Westview is AB, and there's so many factors in that. We're leaning pretty hard towards an AB type of model, so the student would be here all day. We would hope that would help. But we do need to divide the students to keep those numbers, like I said. We would divide them most likely by alphabet, and then there might be some exceptions made as parents, put in like, that's just really not going to work or something. But it's going to be tough because I know that was a challenge for the elementaries trying to make it work, and we got to keep the class sizes down. So I have to actually, once we do all this work, I kind of have to look at an alpha sort in every single classroom because our teachers were saying, I think Jen, you were in there too, Jen, sometimes you get years that your whole class seems to be first name A through G, right? And so how's that alphabet split look? In that case, I could make exceptions maybe to help us make that alphabet balance. But if you can imagine trying to get all these students back and taking all these personal requests and stuff like that, that's going to be really, really challenging. So I have to be honest on that one. I don't know how much we could allow you to ask for a different day or AM or PM and things like that. And I get it. I only have 1 year that all 3 of my kids were at one school. So I understand the angst that comes with that. We would let you know well in advance though of what it's going to look like.
There is a question about how many students would be placed in a classroom.
Again, we're looking at probably in the range of, I don't want to put a hard cap on it because some rooms are quite a bit larger or how it's designed or something like that. But if you take a regular, let's do some simple math. If you take a regular class and make it say 30 students, so 2/3 want to come back. So we're at about 20 kids. If half are coming each day, so you're kind of running in that 10 per day per class range in a regular size class. So it might be a little higher, maybe 12, maybe 15, not positive. We really got to look at our classes and stuff. But I think that's in a reasonable range to think that it's probably gonna be in the 10 to 12 range for students in a classroom. And let's say we get an anomaly class with the alphabet, sort is kind of odd, then we'd maybe look at a different spot for that class to be or use an overflow room or, a bigger space. So we're gonna have to look at every single one of those classes and make those decisions.
If we rebuild the schedule and kids possibly lose current teachers, would we be able to make a selection about in-person or VLA with the knowledge of if our kids would keep current teachers or have major changes?
So we would let you know that we're going to say go with master rebuild before you're resurveyed. So you'd go in taking that survey with the option to choose your summer selection. Based on that, it is going to be a master rebuild and your kids could lose classes and stuff. I can't then do another survey after that and say, well, did you like it? And now I got to rebuild again based on, well, I kind of liked it, but I kind of didn't. That's really, we would never open. I got to be honest with you, rebuilding the master schedule already is going to be an incredible amount of work, and we're willing to do it if we really think it's best for students overall. I mean, there is no ideal in any of these. We absolutely know that. We're trying to figure out what's best for kids, and really for, the last 2/3 to the second half of the year, we really are trying to do that right. So you wouldn't have another option after that. Like you find out, oh, Mrs. Jones is not going to be teaching in person, so I want to change. We just couldn't do that. Sometimes the answer is hard, but it's got to be out there.
Another person wants to make sure they understood correctly. 65% of the VLA kids in AB model would get new humanities teachers.
Yeah, that's correct. Because mathematically, do it again, like if you've got about 10 humanities section, 10 humanities sections, and I only need 3 of them to be VLA, but the kids are spread across all 10, they have to move into those 3 virtual classrooms.
Where would we find the substitutes for these classrooms for the
Right.
teachers? Is there funding for this?
Yeah, my understanding is that we can find substitutes and use other staff. They're not instructing the kids. They're being instructed by their teacher, their virtual teacher, as they're in the classroom, similar to what we're doing now, and we're finding it to be very effective. We're not putting 30 kids in a room with a sub or a classified staff member to watch them. Our ACES staff has been amazing in helping out with this. So they're there to support the students, make sure they have what they need, keep them safe. But the instruction, remember, is coming from the teacher. Just like at home right now, the teacher is teaching and the child is doing it on their Chromebook, and the parent is supervising them. In this case, we would supervise them during that time. We'd try to keep that as minimal as possible. And like I said, if we find out a kid that seems to be in person, but like all the teachers they ended up with in the original master schedule are not going to be virtual, we'd make a phone call on that child and work with the parents to try to figure something out. I wouldn't put them all day long on that.
How is the AM/PM option viable for working families? Will there be options for childcare?
We're not really leaning too hard towards the AM/PM. I just wanted to put it on there to show you how we did explore it. Especially for the amount of time it takes to screen kids to get them on campus. That's a concern. We want classes to start right on time, and screening kids can take quite a while. We're really learning from our elementary schools, what the best screening practices are, but they're probably, regular size elementary is probably screening in maybe 200 kids a day or something, and we have to do, 300 plus. So we've got to figure that out. I don't think we're going to go with an AM/PM. I don't want to take it off the table and all together, and we would let you know this ahead of time if we are going with that model. And I don't want to take it off altogether, because what if something really changes and we look at that and that's absolutely the best model for our students? And then we could work with, remember, there still could be ACEs and things like that for after school care. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide, because some of these other questions might get answered as we go along, and there's going to be opportunity at the end too. So will kids get new teachers when they reopen? Like I said, it depends. That first model includes rebuilding the master schedule to match the kids. Right now they're spread across the schedule because we reopened on September 2nd with our original master schedule. I do want to let you know, because this is the question I get quite a bit, is will the math courses change? No, your math course would not change. If you're in math 7-8 or integrated 1, you'd still be in that math course. Your teacher might change, what period it's taught might change, but we would not change that class. Rebuilding the master schedule does impact both virtual and in-person, like I said. And then we do have this reopening team, several teachers on that, working on this question. And we're certainly listening to the parents both tonight and your concerns. And like I said, that questionnaire that we've developed, it's not a vote. I wouldn't even call it a survey necessarily. It's to kind of get a pulse for what the priorities from our families in the virtual environment is. and what the priorities for the families in the in-person environment are, as far as helping us make that final decision about the rebuild. We're gonna make that decision fairly soon, and we'll let you know as soon as we decide if we're rebuilding or if we're going with a different model. And then after we let you know that, and then you would get a chance to change your summer vote. And we need to do that all very quickly so that we can get moving to get reopened. Okay. I think I answered a lot of the other questions. That's just kind of a thing. So, and that again is back to, will parents get their chance to change their summer commitment? I can't do it. I can't keep doing the re-up because it'd be almost impossible to rebuild and ever reopen, okay? And again, this is not forever. It's for, you know, a little over half of a year. And every staff member on this campus, I can tell you, I've been here, you know, both as a parent when my 3 kids went through and getting to know these teams. These are teachers who are willing to go above and beyond for your kids. So they might get a new teacher, but that doesn't mean not a great teacher, right? It's just, it's one of those things we change. And if we think about it at the semester, we're kind of really thinking about it. These are middle schoolers, and I always respect that fact, but when they do, some kids will be in kind of classes when they flip in science and they get used to a new teacher halfway through. We've been doing that here at Mesa Verde for many years. When they go to high school, they get new semester classes. We're here to support the kids. And part of our decision-making, why it's so hard and why we don't have an answer yet, is because we're taking all these things into account and trying to make the best decision. So what would it look like? Will they be 5 days a week? I just wanted to reiterate that no, we can't have all the kids on campus every day. That's the hardest part. We really try to figure out how can we get them all here every day? And we just can't, because we got to keep that spacing down, okay? So I'll pause on this one and people can read it. I've been talking about these same things. And part of the reason why I got a lot of detail in here that I'm not going to necessarily read is I'm going to share this out then too with people to review later. So any questions coming in, Melanie or Dennis?
Yes, we have questions. For the rebuild master schedule model, if an in-person student has to quarantine for 10 to 14 days, will they be on an OCIS contract during this time? How will they stay current?
That's one of the challenges of this is, yeah, they would be on they'd be 14 days. It wouldn't be necessarily the OCIS contract of old days, like when people remember, like you get that form and it was, you know, the list of work. Teachers in this case would keep their Canvas alive, and it would be assignments that they could do from Canvas. But that's the hardest part that with the rebuild is what happens if we have to close a class, and how does that impact not just that class, but the other classes that the students are in, and how do we support that child? So no, if we did go with the rebuild model, and that's one of the concerns about that model is then we say, okay, that's a fact, and how are we going to make it better for the kids if we do have to do that, right? We're not just going to send them home with a packet of work. How can we make it better?
There's a question wanting to know if we've consulted with other schools trying the concurrent simultaneous teaching model. The statement is it's incredibly difficult for teachers and it requires specialized tech equipment.
I didn't hear the last part of that.
It requires specialized tech equipment.
So what we've discovered in the district, because this is being piloted and we have some teachers who are not doing it necessarily in a pilot model, but we have some teachers, like I said, who bring kids into their classroom while they're still maybe teaching a virtual class. So that's at a very small scale though. I understand that. So having 8 to 10 in there is going to be challenging, or maybe 12. So what we are discovering, because I was just at a training a couple days ago, is it doesn't necessarily need a camera. I know if you've seen the video of what it looks like, I think one of the videos showed like a camera up on the ceiling or something. I was just at a training as they're trying these different pilots. They've really discovered that having 2 computers, one a laptop that can move with the teacher, is actually better than necessarily trying to put a camera up on the wall. And then, yeah, having 2 computers is the key to it. So that's the equipment part. The other part is it's a whole new way of teaching. And, you know, like running a Zoom right now, I'm running a Zoom with a lot of people in it, and I've got 2 people helping me right now, right? One managing the chat and one managing the weight room. So we realize that, and that's one of the reasons why we couldn't just say, let's open tomorrow and let's do the concurrent model, because we do need to set our teachers up for success, our students up for success. How would we do that well, right? And that's, I think everybody struggles with, is how do I do it all well, or as well as I did it before, right? We're back to that amazing, amazing teaching that's been going on, and how do we replicate that?
In Model 1, do VLA students keep the same type of schedule that they have now? Example, 5 days a week with instruction?
And video off. But
Yeah,
I'm
they
watching
would
it.
have,
They're live.
we are looking
My
at
video's
maybe
on.
one of the
They're
days.
live.
One of the days might be an independent work day. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some of the kids, being on the computer 5 days a week, maybe having a day where, obviously it's not busy work, it's work that's related to the work being done the other 4 days. So we are discussing that in the reopening team. What could that 5th day look like for virtual kids? But mostly yes, either in the rebuild model or whatever, the students would be with a teacher 4 to 5 days a week.
Given everything in 2020 is difficult, does it make more sense to do the tough rebuild work now, knowing that we would be able to provide the kids with critical in-person learning now and would last us through the end of the year?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we're thinking is like, what's long-term plan, right? I guess there's concerns that go with each of these, right? And you can make it. I didn't put pros and cons out tonight because I think the reopening team and I and the teachers who've been talking about, we know the pros and cons. And it's not like having 10 things in the pro and 1 in the con means we go that way. Maybe that one thing in the con is enough to make us think those don't even out, right? And so that's what we're doing right now. We're listening to your questions tonight as parents. I'm going to send out that questionnaire to get a better pulse too for everybody. Not everybody's here tonight, I know. And so all of that, for the long term, is it better to do the hard work? Possibly, but then it comes with the downside. The students are doing independent work 2 to 3 days a week, right? Because they can't be on campus every day. We're talking about the in-person kids. And what do we do if we have to close a classroom? Like, those are 2 big factors that weigh in with everything else. And so that's what we're trying to decide right now.
If 65% of the kids are going to have to change teachers, why would this occur in the middle of a grading period?
So it could, because you can, we might be able to do something like you can transfer like overall grades and stuff, but that's a factor that we're taking into account right now too. We're on quarters here. So the first quarter is coming up, I think, in another week. I'm sorry, I'm tired tonight. I'm trying to think of what my dates are. So the first quarter is coming to an end, and then the second quarter would end at the end of January. So the end, changing something in the middle of the grading period can be a challenge, but in the models that would be starting in the middle of the grading period, we wouldn't be moving teachers, right? It's the concurrent model and the third model keep the same teachers. So the grading period isn't a factor. The grading period is a factor when you're talking about rebuilding the master schedule and changing teachers and grades and things like that.
Is there any chance classes could be done outside?
Some classes could be done outside, but if any of you have ever taught math, can you imagine trying to teach math under a canopy outside, day in, day out? That's a challenge. That's a challenge for anything. Now, like I was an English and history teacher, could we go outside if we're reading a book and maybe spread out? Absolutely. I think the hardest part about all this, I can tell you right now, is teachers over the last couple decades have really changed, and we do so much collaborative grouping with students, right? And to put kids in groups and let them discuss and have that, and to not be able to do that when we come back in person is going to be really challenging for all of us. It's rethinking the way we've been teaching. So yes, could we maximize some outdoor space? Yes, but we've only got a little bit of great weather left, and this time of year it's either seems to be really hot and then all of a sudden the cold comes. So that's the thing we're talking about with band too. If band and chorus are outside, what are the regulations? We are chasing that answer. We just talked about it today with Learning Support Services, and they're following the state guidelines. So yes, there could be some outdoor classes. Does that catch us up?
There's still quite a few more, but maybe if you go over more.
Okay, let me go through a little bit more and we'll come back. Okay. So again, the AM, PM versus AB, like I said, we're leaning not necessarily doing AM, PM, but I'm not throwing it out completely yet. Our team is not throwing that out just because, like we're keeping our minds open right now. And again, could you request which days would be AB days? Hey, I want my kid there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, not, Wednesday, Friday. Probably not. It would probably be divided by alphabet, but because that way grade level, you know, if you've got a 6th grader and an 8th grader, they both be on the same days. That would be our priority as a campus. But I know how challenging all this is to have kids at home right now and trying to balance work schedules and stuff. So I hope that answers that. So what we're working on right now, I'm not going to read all of this, but when the board met, the school board met back on the 15th of October, this is what they recommended, and that's what we're doing right now. So obviously we're having our meeting right now on this week. The high schools were earlier this week and middle schools are tonight. Right now we're still virtual. We're not opening tomorrow. But the teachers who are teaching virtually, like I said, we've got about 40% of our teachers are pretty much teaching here primarily, maybe not 100% of the time, but almost every day. And then another probably 20% who are kind of balancing between coming in on some days and at home some days. So we're doing a lot of this thing already. I'm proud to say that Mesa Verde, like I said, our counselors, we started calling before school even started. We started identifying those kids who needed some extra help. So we've really been doing a lot of that work. And our counselors get a big shout out for that. And other schools are looking at us and said, how'd you do that so fast? Because you know what? We had to do it really fast. We identified those kids and we wanted to support them. And then we have to get our plan to the school board by November 12th. That doesn't mean I'm waiting until November 12th to start rebuilding a master schedule if that's what we're doing. I've actually been doing that preliminary work since we reopened, kind of looking at how many kids in each class are virtual, how many kids in each class are in person, what does that do to the schedule? That's why I know the statistics pretty well of how many kids would be impacted by, say, a new humanities teacher. We are doing this work collaboratively on campus. We have a reopening team, lots of different grade levels and subjects there. And I can tell you they're hard conversations. I've never had such difficult conversations ever. And this is 26 years in education now. So what are our next steps? I promise this isn't the last slide, although death by PowerPoint couldn't be out there. It's a real thing. So what are the next steps? I want to thank you for your time. We're going to take some more questions in a minute, but I'll update this too. So when I share it, it'll be shared as a link that people could access, because I will update some things on there, especially based on tonight. Like some questions I might think, oh, that slide wasn't very clear. All the different models, I'm just telling you, are going to impact students. So that Survey Monkey that I'm going to be sending out tomorrow is to get your pulse. I want to get a pulse from our community to help us guide this work. It should come out tomorrow. And that'll be a pretty short turnaround time because we want to use that data next week when we make our decision about which model is going to be best for our Mesa Verde kids. And again, there will be an opportunity for you to change your original commitment. That'll come in probably about a week after we publish our plan, okay? So that way I have the up-to-date information to do the work, all right? So questions and answers, this is your opportunity to ask questions. Keep in mind though, if you're asking very, very detailed questions about it, what exactly the school day is going to look like, how long is a period going to be, how long, all those things, that's really work of our reopening committee. So once we nail down which model, then we start working on the logistics. And schools are good at logistics, like we do that well. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on that right now because we're spending our time on collecting information and making this decision. So if you've got a question, you can put it in chat. If you can give a subject so that way they know and they can look for things.
So Christine, there is a question. Is there one preferred model that Mesa Verde is leaning towards?
You know, I don't want to say that at this point. We're looking at all the different models.
And there are quite a bit of comments as well as questions believing that parents would really need to know the information if their teacher is VLA or in person, so that because that will influence their decision.
Again, like I know, and I knew that question was going to come up, and that question came up in the summer too. Here's the thing though, it might change. You know, you might think, oh, it's Mrs. Jones. I just got to have Mrs. Jones. I'll go wherever Mrs. Jones goes. And then Mrs. Jones has to go virtual for some reason, right? And you know, those are things that could be health related. We don't know all those things, why teachers have to be virtual. You know, that's private information. And so you could be making a decision on something that could really change. And I know that came up a lot in the summer with the yearbook. Well, which one is it going to be? And I said, you can't really know that information because it could change. All these things could change. So you really got to make that decision about virtual versus in person based on if you want virtual versus in person, not if it's going to be teacher A, teacher B, teacher C, because that's really difficult. We could never get this work done. All I would be doing is trying to match everybody's like 1,100 plus people, trying to match like, well, I only want to go virtual if it's this teacher and stuff. That is just, it's impossible work. We're already talking about a huge daunting amount of work right now. And what's going on campus is we're really trying to provide an environment right now and bring more kids on. I don't know how it is possible, but 100 kids on campus we're just as busy if there was 1,100 here right now. So, we're trying to make this great and support our teachers and support our kids, and to do this big choice thing, I don't know how we could do it. I just don't know how. And I know that's not the answer you want.
Christine, can I address something? It's Jennifer Hansen.
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say maybe it will make some people feel better. I can only speak for the 8th grade humanities team, but since the beginning of the year, we've talked about standards that we will all meet by certain dates. So if your student has to change classroom from my classroom to another 8th grade humanities classroom, you can at least know that we're working together and making sure that we're covering the same curriculum. It may not be in the same way, but we're covering the same curriculum, and we're making sure that we meet certain standards by certain dates, so that if the students do have to change teachers, they should have all had about the same curriculum and met certain standards and be ready to move on to new standards. And I'm sure other departments would do the same if they aren't already.
Yeah, and we've talked about that since the beginning of the year, knowing at some point we might have to change teachers or something, was asked to have people, at least with those essential standards, to be aligned so that as much as it's as least disruptive as possible. But I want to remind you too, like if you're at the high school level, you might not know all your courses that you're going to get for a semester or which teachers are teaching it either. Like that's not uncommon to not know exactly what courses you might get. It might be in the schedule, but things can change at high school too. And I know these are middle schoolers, and our social emotional piece is so important, and we got to set them up for success. Melanie?
There is, I just want to make sure that the survey is clear to everybody. Is this something that they're committing to,
No.
or is this, you had talked about taking a pulse, so.
Yeah, it's just a pulse. It's going to be a survey monkey. You'll see it's just kind of questions about, what's a priority for you, for your child in virtual or in person. That just kind of gives us a feel for, because we want your input, and I can't call all of you on the phone or have that many meetings. So it's a way to kind of get a temperature gauge on our community. That'll be coming out tomorrow. Like I said, the reopening team designed it because those are the answers they want to help us make that decision about what's best for kids. I'm hoping that we kind of see clear patterns in it. Whenever you're talking about a vote or something though, when you end up kind of 50-50, then, where do you go with that? But then later, after we tell you that, hey, we're going to rebuild it, or it's going to be the concurrent simultaneous model, or it's going to be the AM PM model. Once we tell you that, that's when you get your chance to go ahead and say, I want to change my summer commitment. Okay.
And then there was a comment that in listening to this presentation, it seems like the proposed changes are prioritizing in-person students over virtual students. Am I hearing that VLA students would lose 1 day of instruction, switch 65% of their teachers, and if concurrent, be vying for instruction and help with IP students?
Those are it's kind of combining different models, and that's why we got to kind of look at each one. So I wouldn't say it's prioritizing in person over virtual. We're really trying to hit that equity mark. How do we, but it might not look, just like it might not look the same for the in-person kids, obviously, when they're coming back, the virtual kids, theirs might look different too. So it wouldn't be all of those things. And that's why we're trying to weigh, like, how do we keep this as equitable as possible? That's why that third model, I can flip back to it. That third model always bothered me a little bit, because if you actually look at this third model, the blue one, that idea that, wait a minute, so the in-person kids in this case are really only getting like 2 to 3 mornings a week of live instruction. And when I say live, it could mean in person or, on the computer. Whereas the virtual kids get it all afternoons. So, that's one of the things that we're struggling with on all of these. So I think the question though kind of combined the virtual experience from multiple one of these. I think most sites I can tell you are kind of looking at maybe adding the independent workday, not as punitive or anything. It's kind of to give the kids a break from the computer, give them a chance to catch up, catch their breath, not catch up, catch their breath, get some, writing assignments done without having to worry about being on a Zoom at this time and that time and stuff. So don't think of it as a less than that one. We're just trying to think of how to balance all this because we are listening, right? We are listening to the struggles of kids in virtual world too.
Is there a set number of instructional minutes for middle school right now? If you drop 4 days of 2 to 4 days of instruction, how do we meet the instructional minute requirement?
Our state guidelines right now for this crisis are 240 instructional minutes per day. Our schedules right now are built at 270 minutes per day. We would certainly still follow those guidelines when we're looking at the new schedule.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah.
Just a minute, my seat's getting a little hot. Hang on.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to go through. There's many questions that I'm trying to combine. Are the kids from different learning models learning the same amount of material? VLA all day, 5 days so far, in person 2.5 days, then independent work?
Well, right now, remember too, a classroom setting right now is not the teacher standing in front of a whiteboard the whole time, right? There's always that opportunity in the classroom where the kids, there's like a launch, there's, the interest factor, there's the little bit of instruction, then there's kids working on things and then coming back together. There's always that give and take in a classroom. The days of a teacher standing at a whiteboard all day have been gone for quite a while. So in any model, it just means the teachers kind of got to shift how they think about it. They might not be able to do the little bit of instruction, longer period, little. It might be that they get to kind of restructure how they deliver the material for those independent work days. That's what I can tell you right now. The teacher's main concern right now is how do I get through my material, right? In a meaningful way. And that's true now in the virtual, and it's gonna be true in no matter what model we take on. We are at shorter school days now, but we never lower our standards. That's such a struggle for the teachers, right? Think about, I can't teach less. Man, all of it's important. So at the beginning of the year, actually last spring, they started really looking at what's the essential standards, what do we really need to have them know? And they're just struggling with that. I hear it all the time is I don't feel like I can get through everything. And so that's where those essential standards come in, and it's kind of looking at how you use that time. All kids have independent work time, right? So if you were going with an A/B model where they're on independent one day and in school one day, that work would be connected, right? It's not gonna be just random 2 different things going on Monday versus Tuesday. It's connected work.
If a student chooses in person and their current teacher chooses in person, will they get to stay with their current teacher since they both chose in person?
Most likely, but if you're talking about a rebuild of a master schedule, you really do randomize a schedule. You can't hand schedule 1,100 kids on paper to keep them with all their teachers. So you can kind of match up and put them. I don't want to get too detailed, but our system that we use called Synergy, you can kind of link kids to teachers and try to keep as much of it as possible. But it's complicated work. So I think my main goal for the kids, let's say if your teacher's virtual and it's maybe not a humanities course where it's 3 classes a day where you're Zooming while you're in person with a humanities course teaching from home. We kind of look at that. But yeah, if their teacher is a match, most likely they'd stay with them, but I can't promise it.
Why would in person be taught by a VLA teacher?
Well, because some courses are only offered maybe by a VLA teacher. So again, let's say the class is pottery. And the pottery class, the teacher is virtual, but the students want to stay in the teachers feels like they can still have a pottery class. Pottery is probably not the best example, but the pottery teachers at home, the kids who are at school are taking that course along with the virtual kids. And so they're here doing the work while the virtual teacher is teaching it.
I just want to check take a
Mhm.
process check. It's 8:10 and we
Yeah.
have quite a few more questions. You want me to keep asking?
Let's do just, and feel free to leave, obviously, you guys. What I'll do too is we'll look at these questions and then we'll do like an FAQ to kind of get these answers out too. If you're seeing a pattern there, Melanie, for questions.
Mhm. I think at this point, they're kind of all over.
Okay. All right.
There are questions about funding. Does the school have the necessary funding and the required resources, like, similar to the sub and the tech equipment?
Yeah, subbing and staff, subs and staff, that's a concern, and we've been working out the kinks on subs as is. We can get them, but trying to figure out all the Zoom details and stuff. I think we've finally got that nailed down. Yeah, so staffing is a concern. We're lucky because we've got ACES staff helping out right now. We're just kind of have to reshift how we think about some classified positions and see who's got that niche to supervise kids. Right now, yeah, that's always the big question. I'll just tell you that question's going at every single site. How do we have the staffing to cover what we need to cover? That's a valid question. And it's a question that's at every single site.
There's been a couple of questions about the grade book. So if they have to change teachers, will the grade book follow the student and be given to the next teacher?
Yeah, if it's at a semester, we would really be building a separate master schedule to be the next one. So their semester grade would close out for their current teacher and they'd have a new grade for their when they start the new class. So that's how the grade book works. If we're doing something that, let's say we went with a different model that we don't have to rebuild the master schedule and a couple kids, have to move classes and stuff, something we're working on, then we do that all the time. Sometimes kids have to move a class, maybe something changed or something. So it's not unusual to have to transfer a grade. We wouldn't want to do it as a whole school, but it can be done.
And do all the scenarios maintain a late start day?
You know what? That's a good question, and I don't have an answer to it yet.
And can you share about how the mental and social health of our children are being prioritized?
I can tell you that's our priority as we're talking about these models. That's why we didn't just randomly say, let's go with this one. We know that the kids are impacted in all these models, right? Whether the rebuild and they get some new teachers and maybe miss out on a course, or the concurrent simultaneous where they're in a classroom with the teacher who's working with virtual and them at the same time. Like we're considering that constantly. Like that's why we have kids on campus already. Like that's all we think about. And it's different for every kid too, right? Like some kids, my own son, I asked him, I go, if you had to change teachers, he's like, yeah, that's okay. But another one of my kids, he'd be like, no way, man. So each kid's unique too, right? But I can't build 3 schedules based on 3 different kid types. And so we're just really kind of looking at all that. I'm hoping maybe the information that comes from parents tomorrow, it's not a vote or anything, but it'll give us some insight into your priorities and how that could help us make these decisions too.
If we choose virtual or in person, is our choice staying until summer?
I would say at that point, yeah. Unless everything happened and changed and said we're coming back, like COVID completely went away or something. Right at this point, though, I think it would probably be for second half of the year.
If an in-person student had a majority classes taught by VLA, could they change?
We would look at those cases, yeah. That's work that we would do. Just like when we look at any schedule, we look for those anomalies. So we would definitely look at that, absolutely.
There's questions about when will they know the choice?
By November 12th.
Okay. And will rooms and desks be cleaned after each class? Who is doing the cleaning?
Right. So there are custodial guidelines and stuff. I don't want to get into a lot of the nitty gritties of that, and we'll do that as we get ready to reopen. Those are all in the guideline too. For the sake of time, I want to kind of answer unique questions to this. Anything else?
No, I think lots of people thinking and acknowledging what a logistic nightmare it is. So I think that's it.
You know what? Somebody said it this way, like school schools are good at logistics and systems, and we have had to rethink every single system and how we do that. So imagine like everything is topsy-turvy, and we're trying to not only figure that out, but also plan for the next step. So I appreciate your patience. I know you guys have been very supportive of the teachers. They appreciate it a great deal. This has been really challenging. It's nobody's ideal. And this is gonna pass. We're gonna get through it, but it is a logistical challenge. I kind of equate it to, you know, you've got a hurricane and usually you've got that nice little eye in the middle of the hurricane where there's a little bit of calm. No, our hurricane has a tornado in the middle. So you're almost kind of like, oh, what's worse? So I appreciate your flexibility. That's where we're all going to have to be at this point. No way do I ever want to take away every child's teacher and blow up their schedule. That is not our goal. Our goal is to make this as seamless as possible, but knowing that we're all going to have to flex. The teachers are flexing, the kids are going to have to flex. Parents, take a deep breath, realize kids are resilient. You know, we want them back if they want to be back, but we also want to really go ahead and respect that choice to stay virtual and give you guys a top-notch virtual the equity piece is really important to us between the two programs. All right, so I'm going to wrap up now. Let me see if I had another slide. I don't think I do. Questions and answers. Yep, that was my last slide. This was on YouTube and it was recorded. I'll put that recording up later and I'll get a copy of this out onto our website. If you haven't noticed, I like to put things on the website so you don't have to go back and look through all your old emails to find that. So check out our homepage of the website, and thank you very much. I know we had about 150 at one point here, a lot of people, and I'm talking to a little tiny camera. So thank you guys. Happy Wednesday, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Stop share. And